Hello everyone, and thanks for joining us for episode 2 of the Future of Marketing Live series. The subject of this evening's conversation is retail and e-commerce marketing. It's been a tough time for retailers since March 2020, and there's been an acceleration in the move to an e-commerce offer for a lot of companies. There's no doubt that the changes we've seen will have a lasting impact on the fabric of our high streets, so we thought we'd get 3 guests working in the retail and e-commerce sectors to talk to us about their recent experience, the skills you need to succeed, and do a little bit of crystal ball gazing. What is the future of marketing for retail and e-commerce businesses? Let's go inside and meet our guests. So let's introduce the 3 guests for this evening. So on my left here we've got Lendrum from Codefixer. In the middle we have Eileen Quinn from Shnuggle and Kevin Traynor from E-Comm Live. So if we can start off, Corey, could you tell us a little bit about what Codefixer does and what your role is within the company?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Corey. I look after all of our PPC clients at Codefixer. I'm the PPC lead, so that's just Google Ads and Bing Ads. Codefixer is a small agency based in the Malone Road in Belfast. We're first and foremost a search agency, so we focus on SEO and PPC, and we also do WordPress development as well.
Okay, and Eileen, if you want to tell us a little bit about what you're doing with Snuggle.
Yeah, my name is Eileen and I work for Snuggle in Newton Ards. I am the export manager for Snuggle and I look after all our exports across the globe, worldwide, from Australia to South Korea to Japan to Asia and mostly all of Europe. And my job, I suppose, day to day is ensure that I keep retaining the sales and grow new leads throughout the day. And it's a fun company to work for.
Okay. And Kevin, do you want to tell us a little bit about E-Comm and your consultancy business?
Yeah, so I run Grow Consultancy. We're a digital growth consultancy. We're a HubSpot partner, a Klaviyo partner, and we use a range of kind of technologies to help clients grow B2B businesses and e-commerce businesses. And then a few years ago, I had a crazy idea at the time to run an e-commerce conference, 2019, and that's E-Comm Live, which is growing pretty significantly. We're hoping to run it in September of this year in Belfast, and we think and hope we're going to have about 500 e-commerce professionals in the room at the conference. So fingers crossed we'll be able to get it over the line this year.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, and we hoped in putting this together that we had a good mix. So, I mean, obviously we wanted Eileen, somebody working day to day in a retail e-commerce business to let our viewers know just what the marketing role and what the sales and marketing role involves in that sort of business. But I think in any of those businesses, as Kevin and Corey no doubt will testify to, there's a requirement for agency support in any of those because there's so many sort of specialisms and technical things that you need to know now in order to succeed in those businesses. So I suppose, Eileen, if we could start with you, you're doing that in-house business development and marketing role. So could you tell us a little bit about what it involves day to day and the sort of skills that you think are most important?
Yep, so in my role on a day-to-day basis, first of all, a lot of it is about customer relationship building. So as I said, we operate across 27 international markets. I have over 27 to 30 international customers. So it's quite busy day to day. I have a lot of queries relating from questions about products to lead time to delivery schedules and right across to when new products are coming out and obviously what marketing support we can help our customers internationally to help promote the Snuggle brand. Luckily, we have we've been working with our customers for over the last 5 to 7 years. So with that time, it's been great to have that relationship with them, and because that comes with over time is they help us. So they give ideas, they respond to what's happening in their market, products develop over time, marketing has developed over time. And what's interesting to me is that similarly to here in the UK and Ireland, internationally, a lot of our customers, they work with influencers as well. They do all the Instagram, they do all the SEO, maybe not as high quality as to what we would have here, but certainly that's where we come in and we develop all the social content for them, and then they have those high quality images and videos.
I suppose there's I mean, most people's exposure to e-commerce businesses now is quite a lot of the time is the sexy social media ads that they see. But I mean, I know from talking to you previously, Eileen, there's an awful lot of under the bonnet stuff that goes on to making a business like that work. Was that a surprise to you, just the level of complexity that there was in a business like that whenever you went into it?
To a degree, yeah. I guess sort of I had changed. I come from construction sector to economic development to now consumer goods. Whereas my previous role sort of gave me that idea of how distributors work and how Northern Ireland companies can grow outside of Northern Ireland, working with distributors mostly in the US was what my experience was. But actually seeing it firsthand, what that involves day to day, you know, you're retaining your sales, you're cross-selling products from different ranges, and then you've got the whole other side of chasing invoices, setting payment terms, logistics, agreeing ex-works terms. So there's a large variety of day-to-day queries that definitely are new to me. So they are, but it's a good mix-up. And a lot of those skills I was able to bring forward with me, particularly with pitch writing and objection handling. You know, like in every business, your customer will say, no, I don't want this product. So, or sorry, just not this time. Maybe in Q4 I'll order it, but you're like, no, I want you to order this product now. So, you know, you have a lot of that objection handling that you develop over time. And it's certainly not something that grads starting out at learn. It's something that comes with your role. And as you develop and you learn from senior managers over time. And I guess one of the skills for working in an e-commerce related retail role is, the biggest skill is listening in my terms. Okay. I have seen grads come in, not even in marketing, across different sectors, and they're not listening to the people that are around them. And I don't mean that they're not listening on what they're doing day to day, but I mean they could be sitting in a meeting and they have access to some of the smartest people in the business, such as senior development business managers, and they're not really absorbing what they can learn in that meeting. And I'm a wee bit old school, like I note everything and date absolutely everything, no matter who I'm talking to. I note everything. That's how I've learned the skills that I've come to. And
do you think that the experience you've got in export businesses, because I know myself, I worked in businesses that were exporting, you have to listen. Yeah. Because you can't be where they are. So you mentioned like South Korea, Australia, far off places. Without listening to your distributors and your customers in those places, you can't possibly know what to do. Do you find that the skills that you learned in the engineering and construction sectors particularly, as well as with the Economic Development Agency, those exporting skills are transferable no matter what sector you end up in? Definitely,
100%. Again, it's sort of a new area for me in marketing, as was whenever I worked in engineering and I did a lot of bids and tendering and pitch writing. That was all new to me, but I absorbed all of those skills through listening to the people that are around me, listening to the engineers. When you are surrounded by other colleagues who work in different departments, and I just brought all of that with me. And it means that whenever, you know, you're stuck one day and nobody's around, I'm faced with a challenge. How am I going to overcome this? You just simply revert back to whatever notes you have written beside you, and you know your brain works in wonderful ways, and you can just think like that. Well, that's how I think anyway. So do I just revert back to whatever piece of information I have and just spin ideas out of that, and then the challenge is solved. Whether it may be responding to a customer query and you don't know how to start off the email, or sometimes maybe it's just even taking a phone call. And I think sales calls and sales pitching is another large element of e-commerce and international marketing, having that confidence to talk to the customer, like sales calls. And I know we spoke about this before. It was, you know, you think of phone centres or call centres is the word I'm looking for. It's just you're on the phone constantly, but in a retail e-commerce related role, sales is quite different. You know, you're getting to know your customer, you're being a wee bit open, getting to know them personally, I think is really important. And then it's just more of a conversation, like what me and you're having now is how sales has probably shifted over, especially with COVID. It's definitely shifted to being a bit more conversational rather than just sell.
I mean, Eileen's touched on it there a little bit, Kevin, in terms of the amount of information we've all got coming at us now, and the amount of choice that we have as marketers has never been greater, which is fantastic, but also presents a massive challenge for us. So based on your development of E-Comm Live and the Grow Consultancy, what are the latest trends that you see coming through in e-commerce marketing, and where are they coming from?
So I suppose the great thing about COVID is that it's just kind of put a fire under a lot of e-commerce businesses, right? So they were kind of doing well before, or maybe struggling before, and then all of a sudden they're doing brilliantly. And, you know, very few sectors like travel, for example, took a hit. But, you know, we were talking, Corey and I were talking earlier about people selling booze online or Shnuggle, like everyone having an uplift off the back of COVID. But with all that opportunity comes challenges. You know, there's more businesses out there selling online. There's more and more content out there in the feed all the time. So, like, you know, if you go onto like your Instagram feed or like any LinkedIn, any channel now, like it's just so busy, you know. So, you know, and people are talking now, like, you know, stopping the scroll, you know, top of the funnel stuff, you know, and so video is more and more important. I think what's become more and more important is owning that relationship with the customer. You know, we've got great relationships at E-Comm Live with Facebook and Google and, you know, all these kind of, what are now traditional kind of digital marketing channels. But, you know, they're all building walled gardens for themselves, right? So iOS, Apple, like they're all like looking after their own domains. Like Google looks after Google is one of the things I say to the guys, right? So if you're an e-commerce business, you need to own that relationship with the customer. How do you do that? SEO, email, kind of loyalty schemes, all this sort of stuff. So the reason why I love digital and I love e-commerce is because it's never change. It's non-stop. It's changing all the time. There's always a kind of an intellectual thing that you have to kind of keep up to speed, learn new stuff all the time, which is really, really important, you know, for getting into the digital space. TikTok. So we're hoping to have someone from TikTok talking this year. Some of the brands we're talking to, the results they've had from TikTok this year have been absolutely phenomenal. And they're just looking at it and going, like, we're going to stick all our money in there from now on because Facebook's not doing it for us anymore, or, you know, the cost of acquiring customers in Google's, you know, it's too expensive now. So it's great and it's challenging and it's interesting. And go back to what Eileen said, you know, what the skills you need, like you need to just have an open growth mindset, always be prepared to learn. If you don't know the answer to stuff, go away and find the answer, because very often clients will ask us the question and we don't know it, but we'll go away and spend the time finding it out, and building a solution for them based on that particular challenge, you know. So
is that an essential requirement, I suppose, of going into any marketing job now? Is that agility to know that, you know, what you know now, you can't possibly know the channels that you're going to need to use in 2 years, 3 years time, because they haven't been invented yet. So
think about TikTok. I remember looking at my kids, like, so when lockdown happened last year, right, I did a TikTok with my kids, you know, what was the track, the blinded by the lights, you know, kind of like messing about and stuff. I used to look at my kids looking at TikTok going, what's that about? You know, like 8 and 9 year olds, absolute nonsense, and writing it off. And then all of a sudden, a year later, all these brands, like Gordy Newman from Lifestyle Sports was telling me about all the results they're getting off the back of kind of, you know, of TikTok, working with influencers and TikTokers, you know, stuff that, you know, that's kids doing that, you know, and it's not kids, it's the new channels that are coming through. And the people that are doing well are the people who are utilising them, who are figuring out how to use them. The agencies that are doing well are the ones that are saying, well, we can, you know, it's like some of the agencies, again, in the UK that are doing stuff on TikTok, it's just phenomenal, you know, and the results they're getting are phenomenal. And again, it's cheap because, you know, they're keen to build out their kind of the business manager and their advertising on the platform. But there'll be a new one in 6 months, 8 months, 12 months time, you know, and the challenge is staying up to speed, you know, moving on, you know, getting your clients the best results on a range of different channels, you know.
I mean, the agility thing, I mean, E-Comm Live, you know, has the conference and then the training day on the day before it. Do you think that, I mean, obviously it's a bit of an obvious question maybe because you've decided to do it, but do you think that's pretty essential now as part of any marketing event to try and get people to come to?
Well, I suppose we responded to demand in the marketplace. People were saying to us, like, we were already running events throughout the year, and then what we decided to do was sort of double up, right? So you get a day of training at the start of the conference, then we do social stuff in the evening time, then you have the conference the next day. And it made sense when you're bringing all those people to Belfast for a day, have them here for a couple of days, you know, and then the idea is build deeper relationships with people who are working in the space, because they're going to be here. We're going to be doing things like, we're going to go out to the gin distillery tour and street art tour and all that stuff around the town. So you're enjoying Belfast when you're here. But absolutely, I mean, the technical training, I mean, we spend like a lot of time in the office, and I try with my staff, just say, right, guys, you've got a technical training allowance every month. You're expected to use that, go away and learn some new skills. And then we check in at the end of every month and we go, right, what have we learned this month? What are the new things we're doing? You know, what are the things we're able to do for our clients this month that we weren't last month, you know? And it's just, you need to be agile. You need to be hungry for knowledge, you know, and it's kind of, it's a growth mindset. I call it a growth mindset and an attitude. You know, you can teach people all the technical skills in the world. You can't teach them the attitude. I don't know the answer, but I'll go and find it out for you. Or I want to learn that because I don't know it right now, you know. And
well, it's one of the, we had Joanne Falloon from Ulster University on last week. And we talked about, you know, how graduates can make themselves stand out from the crowd, and it's probably not what graduates want to hear, having just spent 3 or 4 years of a hard slog at their degree. But the learning never stops was one of her points, you know. And if you think that you've got the degree on your CV now and you're done, you know, it really is a case probably of every couple of years. I mean, I know I graduated longer ago than I'd care to remind anybody, but you know, every 2 or 3 years, if I look back at the old LinkedIn profile, which tells you, you know, you can see got every 2 or 3 years there's something else, whether it's, you know, a Facebook training course or a Google Ads course or something. There's, because you get to the point where you're thinking, like, exactly like you said, I know I need to do this, but I don't know how.
Yeah, and it's that, having that agility, having that attitude to go on, like, you know, and that's the thing that'll keep you fresh. And the other thing I keep saying is I'm looking for 2 things now when people approach us to work with us, or, you know, other people are saying, you know, do you know anyone who you can recommend to us? You know, we're looking for a new graduate, whatever else. You want, like, I'd rather have someone come along and say, you know, I'm slightly less qualified from an academic perspective, but I've done this on TikTok, and I've built my own website on Wix, and I've done my own blog, and I've got a couple of thousand followers on Instagram, because they're learning it, they're hustling, they're figuring out how to use these things in their own right. And look, that might never have gone anywhere, but it's just showing you a willingness to get out, to put themselves out there, use the channels, you know, figure out how it works and stuff, you know, because, like, ultimately we're all figuring this stuff out as we go along, right? Because there's a new format, there's TikTok, and then Instagram brings out their reels, and then they're all competing with one another. We put a reel up last week on Instagram and had 750 views within 5 minutes of being up there, and we were sitting, this is to promote the conference. So it's a B2B conference. We're putting out content on a B2C platform in a reel format, and it's having, like, you know, over 500 views, 750 views, whatever it was, in just over 5 minutes, and we're scratching our heads going, how did that just happen? What are they doing? And then we were working out the algorithm, and they're replicating the algorithm on reels that they are on TikTok. It's sort of pushing out a certain number of people who push it out to a few more. And we're working that out as we're going along, you know, like, because no one really knows. Like, and the platforms aren't telling you.
Well, I mean, it brings me on, I suppose, to Corey. I mean, you know, a PPC business or a Google Ads business or a Bing Ads business or whatever it is, I suppose you never know what's going to happen in terms of search algorithms and all that stuff. So, I mean, not just within the agency, you guys obviously need to stay on top of that so you can keep delivering results for your customers. But is that an example of why, you know, I was in businesses in my life where, you know, the MD or the boss would have said, why are we paying agencies to do all this stuff? So we can do all this stuff in-house. Why don't we just hire someone? And I was like, well, we don't have the time to understand it as well as we need to understand it. So it's increasingly challenging for any business now to get traffic. How can you tell us about some of the work you're doing at Codefixer with e-commerce businesses to help them overcome that?
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, just like everything, sorry about that. Just like everything, Google Ads changes a lot very, very quickly, and it takes me to adjust and adapt to that continuously. The one problem with having something like Google Ads in-house as opposed to having it controlled by an agency is just simply data. You know, I have access to an absolute ton of data from a bunch of different businesses that do a bunch of different things, as construction or e-commerce or recruitment or whatever it is. And having access to that data allows me to kind of preempt and predict what's going on, and it allows me to a lot more quickly kind of ascertain what's working best. So there's a thing I put up on LinkedIn recently about Google Ads image extensions. They came out last month, nobody knows what's going on with them. Nobody knows the best formats, the best way to do it. Nobody knows if it increases your click-through rates, your conversion rates. Just nobody knows. So by having, a dozen clients that I was able to go and cross-reference all that data and use all that, I was able to quite quickly learn that. And I think the problem is, and I've worked in-house as well, the problem with being in-house is you've got a million different things to worry about. You've got your logistics partners to worry about. You've got your shipping department. You've got your sales channels, your sales calls, all these meetings. You've got so many different things to worry about. And you just quite frankly don't have enough time to be an expert in everything. Like, I don't have time to be an expert in TikTok. It's just not happening. I don't do social media anymore because, once again, that was something dedicated a lot of time to. But that's when I kind of realized that I needed to double down my efforts and find something that, first of all, that I enjoyed, because that's the most important thing, and second to that, something that I was good at. And by focusing down and kind of doubling down on that effort, it allowed me to just grow in that role, and it allows me to get better advice to people and just do a better job. So that's the main thing.
Yeah, I mean, it was another conversation actually we had last week where we asked Joanne what was her view on marketers going forward. Was could you still be a successful marketing generalist, or did you need to zero in on something and become a specialist? And from an in-house perspective, I can see the requirement to be a bit of a generalist. I mean, you don't need to be a technical SEO expert, but you need to know the basics of why things like titles and meta tags and image and alt tags and all are important. Yeah. You don't need to know why. I mean, yeah. But is a working knowledge of all that stuff now becoming an essential part of being an in-house marketer, even if it is a bit of a bullshitometer, so you can spot when somebody's spinning you a yarn versus when somebody, is actually, because a lot of the time, the concern from an in-house business's perspective when recruiting an agency can be, you can get blinded by the science sometimes. And all you can do is sit there and nod and say, well, if you're telling me that takes 4 days, then, I don't know enough to know that it doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, look, we get blinded by the salesman, right? So I think it's fundamental that marketers in-house, and I was in-house for years, I think it's important that you understand, at least to a basic degree, understand these different channels and understand even just what the strengths and weaknesses are of them. It'll allow you to better choose an agency as well, because different agencies do different things in different ways. Just because, we're great at Codefixer, we're awesome, but that doesn't mean that there's not maybe another agency that might be able to work with one individual client in a different way that'll be more beneficial towards their business goals. And, I quite frankly, without the in-house marketing people that I work alongside on a day-to-day basis, I wouldn't have a tremendous amount of direction. At the end of the day, I'm an expert in Google Ads. They're an expert in their business, and having that relationship and having an open relationship with lots of great communication is really, really important, and it allows me to be able to focus my efforts on concentrating where the business needs it. So it's a bit cheesy, I said all the time, nobody has clicks in their bank account, nobody has conversions in their bank account, it's all pointless. What they need is customers. And I need to understand what type of leads are best, what type of clients are my clients looking to get, what's most profitable for the business, what do they maybe have a bit of space on that they can work towards. And by working with these great in-house marketers, I'm able to take that kind of broader experience and then take it to my area of expertise and just double down the effort. So understanding SEO, understanding Google Ads, understanding basics about web development will help you in a role. And I think especially for young people as well, that are maybe thinking about what they want to do once they're out of university or once they're done studying, or maybe even just other people that want to reskill, people that maybe been working in a job and thought, right, look, I want to go into digital marketing. It's an emerging market. There's plenty going on there. I think it's good for them just to dip your toes and just figure out, right, social media, SEO, Google Ads, content creation, writing, web design, all these different wonderful skills. Go and try them all. And if you like one of them more than the rest, run with that one. You
find that often, I mean, this would have been my experience. I know when I started work, whenever digital started becoming a thing, sort of in the late noughties, and as it sort of developed from there, we started getting asked questions by agencies that shone a light on the data gaps that we had in-house. Whenever we were dealing with PPC ads or social media ads, and I remember in the early days people asking me the question of, how much are you prepared to spend to get a customer? And I was like, well, as little as possible, please. They were like, no, but how much is each customer worth to you? And you're like, God, we don't know. And what's the lifetime value of that customer? And it's all, the availability of all those digital metrics means that, in order for an agency like Codefixer or like Grow Consultancy or any of the others that are around, and we ask our customers with video as well all the time, when we're running YouTube campaigns and things, how much are you actually prepared to get to spend to get a customer versus, what that customer's worth to you over whatever you define the lifetime as. And very often people can't answer that question. Do you find that response? It's the job of the in-house marketer, and it's an old argument, but to get as close as they can to the finance people, because they're very often the big obstacle to the market and investment. So if they can learn the language and speak the language of the CFO or the finance director, it's going to grease the wheels a little bit and make that application for budget for the next campaign or the next project move a little bit better, because the finance person can see you're not just doing all the bells and whistles and fireworks and spending money here. You're asking the right questions about the right things, which make me more inclined to support it.
The output is the commercial, as Corey said, clicks and conversions. You can't put them in the bank. You're focused on the commercials, which is UK pound sterling or euros or whatever it is. That's US dollars. It's the commercial stuff. It's that. That focus. You're right. Will help you succeed as a marketer.
I think also I've certainly when I've been in house before, earlier on in my career and stuff, I noticed that often there was a wedge driven between marketing and finance, and sometimes finance saw marketing as a bill rather than an investment. And say, pick a number out of the air, and you say, right, it's 20 grand for a new website. And finance might come back, oh no, that's way, way, way too expensive. And you're like, yeah, but if we put 20 grand into the website, we get 100 grand back. They shouldn't be looking at that in a way and going, well, that's very expensive. They should be looking at it going, that's a bargain. You tell me that I put £1 in this magic bucket and I pull a fiver out. You'd open your wallet.
Is the problem there that, and I think it's marketing's responsibility to have better conversations in that regard. I think very often we don't. And I know in the early stages of my marketing career, I wasn't close enough. I didn't speak the language of the finance people. I didn't know how to bring them along with me.
We're the colouring in department, right?
Colouring in department,
and I would make a point as well about we just gone through a massive shock to the global economic system. The first people to get made redundant whenever that happens is the marketing department. And I've been through a couple of upturns and downturns now. I worked for a big financial institution in London. I'll not name them. But whenever the share price was under pressure, the numbers weren't going to be what they were expected to be. We'd walk into the office and 2 or 3 people in the marketing department wouldn't be there on a Monday morning because they've been tapped on the shoulder and told they'd be made redundant. So that's the challenge about being working in marketing, I think, as things ebb and flow in the economic system. And I think that you can, again, the deep technical marketeers, they'll kind of hold on to them. The guy that's got kind of all the kind of the golden nuggets around the kind of the stuff that's really, really technical. And again, even from an agency perspective, some of the guys that I know that are doing really, really well, preserve their price point, charge a really good premium in the marketplace for what they do, are the guys who are really, really good, deep technical experts. So I think you've got a choice to make in your career. And everyone starts off being generalists, right? Because you don't know what you want to do, and you might continue being a generalist and then go technical, and then all the CMOs in the world are all generalists again, right? Because, at certain points in your career, I think, being a general marketeer might put you at more risk because we're the colouring in department. Everyone who works for marketing, we're seen by finance as a cost rather than, so the shit hits the fan, you're out the door, or you're at risk of being out the door. They won't let the sales guys go, they won't let the finance guys go, but they let the marketeers go. So how do you protect your position there? Is it
accountability, isn't it? It's just you being able to prove a business case if this is, I get that marketing used to be, we've got an extra couple of quid, we'll go and get a radio advert or go and get a nice big pretty billboard, and you don't know where the money's gone, you're pissing it away. I think nowadays that everything is much more accountable. I can go to a client and say, look, for every £1,000 you spent, you generated this much back. So in that case, it would be absolutely bonkers for them to cut that off. They'd be like, well, I'm not going to unprint the or I'm not going to unplug the money printer machine because I'm running low on dough, you know. So,
is there an element of? I mean, there's an argument with the digital stuff. Yes, the finance guys love it because marketing now exists in a spreadsheet, right? So, and that's what they always wanted. They've won. They've got us in Excel, right? Yeah. So, the visibility of those metrics drive all the activity towards the stuff that is easiest to measure. Yeah. It doesn't necessarily mean that it is. The old marketing adage used to be, you know, I know I'm wasting half my marketing budget. I just don't know what half. Now we do know. But it's driven a lot of activity towards digital when a lot of the other harder to measure stuff might still perform very well. It's just harder to measure. But what I think what's that's done is it's forced people to think about how you measure it, because it's not impossible to measure. You can measure it. Digital has made us all think, particularly those people selling non-digital marketing channels like your billboards and your radio ads and that sort of stuff, that is much harder to measure. I mean, if you look at the data around, you know, TV advertising is still one of the biggest money buckets for the biggest digital brands in the world. Some of the biggest TV advertisers in the world are Amazon or Google. Like, why are they doing that? They're doing that because they know it works. Now it's hard. It's much harder to measure, but it's there. So is there a danger that while we need to have a very good relationship with the finance team and the senior management team, that we don't just default to the things that they want us to do because they're easy to measure, because we might actually be missing something in terms of the performance?
It also stifles, you know, basing things purely off, you know, metrics and, you know, putting customers into spreadsheets. It kind of stifles risk taking as well, and people are more apprehensive to go and try something new because they think, oh, well, what if I don't make the same return as, you know, Corey and Codefixer's making for us by putting the money on Google Ads? And I don't think that's a healthy way to look at marketing. You know, you've got a fair point there, and that it's to do with your marketing mix. And the more things that you do, the better altogether. You know, I think doubling down and focusing on SEO or focusing on Google Ads isn't a healthy approach to take to it. You know, whether or not you can measure something, I don't think that it's a bad idea to do it. And at the end of the day, we're trying to get products and services in front of people's faces, regardless of whether or not you do that on the phone, you do it on a billboard, or you do it on a bus. You know, at the end of the day, it's all this. I think that it all feeds together, though. You know, you wouldn't get as many people searching for your brand and converting on brand clicks if they maybe didn't see a sponsorship that you'd taken on the F1. You know, people wouldn't be searching your brand for, you know, as often. So it all feeds together. It's all part of the same mix. Or if you create a fantastic video and then somebody watches that and then they go and they Google your brand, well, that's coming from something that isn't directly measurable. You can't see that they saw that video as such, you know. So I think it's all part of a mix. It's all healthy, and, you know, having as many people, as many skills around you, doing as much marketing as possible can only be good for business.
I mean, you touched on it a little bit there, Kevin, about making your, and it's another thing that Joanne actually said last week. I think you and Joanne must have spoken to each other. Yeah, that's right. And in the media, that's right. She did mention that last week too. You know, about making yourself indispensable. Yeah. So, I mean, we both did the Ulster Bank program, and John was a big advocate of the inch wide, mile deep sort of idea. And I mean, that's the thing you talked about was generalist marketers sort of transforming themselves into specific specialisms. Is the story of what I did, but by accident rather than by design with me. You know, we just started doing more video stuff. Couldn't in-house. We couldn't afford a video agency every time we wanted to do something. Needed to build an internal capability. I took it upon myself to learn how to do it. All of a sudden, you're the video guy. Yeah. And any time anybody wants something done, they're just like, oh, I should just ask Peter. And then that's where my interest in it originally started. And that, I mean, I didn't think about doing it. It just happened, and I saw the growth of video everywhere, and thought to myself, there might be actually an opportunity here to zero in on this. So is that advice you'd give graduates to spend some time doing different things and trying to find a thing that they really enjoy and they can really double down on and become that expert?
I think the advice advice I would give to graduates is don't worry about it too much, right? If you've got an interest in marketing, get out there, try some stuff, volunteer at events. We go into Ulster University and we take volunteers in at all of our events and say, look, come in and get a day, work for us half a day, get half a day at the conference, get some experience. Look, I started off, did a law degree, started trained to be an accountant, and then kind of like by the back door landed up being involved in digital marketing and running an agency and kind of, doing relatively senior level digital stuff without any formal qualifications in marketing. So you'll get to where you're supposed to be, but you'll get there by hard work. You still need to work hard. You still need to learn the technical stuff. You need to have the right attitude and work. You still need to be, dead on with a nice person to work with your colleagues, get on in a team environment. All those kind of softer things are important. And, but a bit of graft, a bit of hustle, showing you've done stuff outside the academic thing, I think is really, really important. Those are the things I look for. And then you bring people in, we can teach them the technical stuff, but it's that little extra 10%, 20% that you can't teach people, that you need. And again, I wouldn't, there will be jobs in 2 years' time that don't exist at the minute. There'll be channels in 6 months' time that don't exist at the minute. Influencer marketing, the money that some of those kids are, and they are kind of like, there's the 12-year-old guy, that the guy who's making all the money on YouTube at the minute is the 12-year-old, isn't he? Like doing all the toy unboxing, So, how did that even happen? And they're doing it, and they're making livelihoods for themselves. But what they're doing is, again, whether you want to agree with a child doing that or not, whether there's a big machine behind him, but they're getting up every day, they're producing content every day, they've got a schedule, they've got a work ethic, they're learning the channel, the platform, they're crafting their art.
Is it just my age, right?
Or yes.
The answer to that is always yes. Yeah, okay. Is it just my age, or does it? I find it a little bit depressing that whenever you see the research into what is the job that most 11-year-olds want, and they want to be influencers or YouTubers, and there's part of me saying that's not a job.
I think it's a short-term job. I know we spoke about influencers last week, Peter, and my view on them. Not that they're not short-term, I just think the novelty will die off over the next year or two, because it's not that I know myself, like I have followed influencers in the beauty industry and the beauty industry, fitness industry, whatever they're promoting. And there's that trust thing that you need to build. You just can't pick an influencer just to promote your product because you want them. You have to find an influencer who's really going to connect with your product and, be a brand ambassador for it, but just not pick them because it's a quick fix. They have 100k followers. I can get £10,000 revenue inside a week. Like, I think it should be a longer term thought into it. But marketing overall, to me anyway, has devolved. Like, I would still say I work in marketing, but I'm more into sales now. But I have grew from, like what Corey is saying, in-house marketing. Everything was put towards you, like developing, organising events, designing the backdrops, designing the brochures, doing all the SEO for it, like anything you could think of, because we were a small team. But I have moved around, so I think it's educating grads in marketing that, marketing solely just isn't social media, it solely isn't PPC. Like, I find my strength, and that was through, I work for an engineering company, I've done a lot of bids and tenders and lead generation, and that's my strength. I know my strength is research, making cold calls, connecting, finding buyers, finding distributors. I know that that's my strength, and I have that customer relationship skill that I can build relationships with customers. So I think it's about educating people about the wide variety and the places that you can go with marketing. Like, it's international, it's worldwide, and that's solely a reason why I chose marketing as a career, is because it can bring you worldwide. And now I work with 27 international customers, 27 international time zones, and you're learning about 27 different cultures.
Well, I had a note here to ask you a question just about that, Eileen, actually, because marketing very often gets stuck in the promotion box. And the product development, the choosing your distribution channel, marketing. How many marketers in businesses around here are involved in pricing conversations? Very, very few. The access to the data that you have through the 27 distributors and customers that you have all across the world mean that you're in a very good place to inform all those conversations. So how does your role feed into the company in terms of how it informs? You're talking about customers in China. How does Shnuggle know what products, colours, designs are going to sell well in China? And I mean, particularly in retail and e-com. I was involved in a retail business in the early stages of my life, and I remember the shock. It was like a thermal shock. The speed at which everything moved was just ridiculous. Yeah. And I mean, and that was 20 years ago. I mean, it actually took me a fair while to realise it wasn't for me. But how do you go about staying on top of all that with all the Snuggles distributors?
Time management is key, day to day, 100%. And every customer, I treat every customer, they're so important. Obviously, you have top customers who, get priority some days. But again, it's come back to listening to your customers, is what I touched on earlier. Your customers are your end users of your product. They know what they like and dislike about your product and what is going to sell in the market. So we have fantastic relationships with all of our customers who support us and work closely with our R&D team to develop existing products. They will, we'll host R&D sessions with them and find out, what else can we do for you. And it's about that investment with the customer as well, and then the financial investment, and again talking with the finance team to, get that investment across the road. Because if you're going to invest in a new product for your customer, you're going to generate 10 times the sales in that financial year. So it's customer relationship is so important. But that comes with time on how to develop relationships with your customers. But I think the benefit of COVID is that people are a wee bit softer. Now they're a bit more open to having a bit more of a personable conversation, or even what I do is I go out of my way to find something. If I can't find something to connect with the customer, I will, that's in the media, if there's a global event on, like Italy won the World Cup, like I was telling my Italian customer, thumbs up, I'm supporting you, and hope you win, things like that, small things that mean so much to them. And it makes everybody loves to be told that they're the most special and pretty person in the world. So, you make your customers feel valued, and
It always amazed me, actually. I remember it was a completely different sector, but when I was in the engineering business and we used to go away and do open days and trade shows, I was always very, very impressed by how much our salespeople knew about our customers. In terms of the football teams that supported, the kids that they had, where they went on holidays, all that stuff, because that's currency, like you said in those sales conversations. That because nobody likes being sold to. Everybody thinks being sold to, the defences are up. So, how was this family barbecue last week? And I saw your son's picture on Facebook last week. Suddenly the defences start coming down, and then they move in for the kill.
The more your customer will get to know about you, they begin to understand how busy you are day to day. So if they're needing an urgent answer about a product or a lead time or whatever the question may be, sometimes they will take that bit of pressure off you, and they will then begin to understand just how much you are doing for them. And then it just works better for both parties. So it does.
Do you think? I mean, again, it goes back to the exporting thing. I think what the big eye-opening thing I have whenever we started exporting at CDE was those cultural differences between markets about how they wanted to do business. And, our northwestern European tendency is, get in, get the pleasantries out of the way very quickly and get the deal done and get out again. Yeah. And you'll schedule yourself 5 or 6 meetings in a day and you'll just do them all. And whenever we went to Brazil, I remember our Brazilian sales director over there said, 1 meeting a day, because they'll be 2 hours late.
Yeah.
And they'll spend 2 hours talking about the family and the barbecues, and then you might get to talk to them after about 3 or 4 hours about the stuff that you're going in to sell. And if you try, and you can say, but that's not how we work. Well, that's how they work.
Yeah.
So you think, does that exporting experience, I think, make you better at that?
I think with my previous role in economic development, it brought that awareness to me. Whereas I think if you're a grad walking into an export role and you didn't have that awareness that there is that cultural difference, and you have to accept that there is a cultural difference. But it certainly does help to be aware of what not to say, how to approach things. And it just means you and them can get off to a better understanding. Like some of the, Northern Ireland, we're very laid back. We'll maybe give you an answer in 5 working days if you're lucky, kind of thing. Whereas internationally, you need to be on top of your game. And with grads, I suppose, I've always been a high work ethic, I suppose. But as Kevin said, you have to have that willingness and that attitude there. And sometimes it is about, responding to an email or beyond your 9 to 5 hours or whatever your hours are. Especially in international marketing where you have 27 different time differences, because at the end of the day, you respond to them. It's going to help you get your sale over the line when it comes to month end or the quarter end and the end of the financial year. So, yeah.
Kevin, you touched on it briefly there, your experience in the media industry, and everybody knows the transformation that print media has made to digital, of which, you were a part of that move. Do you think that had something to do with your involvement now in the retail to e-commerce move, because of that question that still exists about, what does the balance now look like between the two, and bricks and mortar versus e-commerce, and how those two end up living comfortably together?
Yeah, so the experience of working in media was interesting, because it was, so it was the Belfast Telegraph, right? So it was a digital director in there, so I had responsibility for some of the classified platforms. But print was in decline, so digital was growing and print was in decline. But the challenge there was that I think, some of the people who were kind of making, some of the executive team in that business were very kind of aligned to the print product as opposed to the digital, where kind of growth was happening, and I didn't really understand digital, and a lot of the time you're trying to educate people on platforms and stuff, so, and I think the same things potentially happening in retail, in that a lot of people who are doing traditional retail are a little bit, or have been historically a little bit afraid about getting online, or some people. So another example of a local clothes shop, who I won't name, but had a branch in the city centre here, and kind of had to close that because high street sales were tanking a few years ago, but went online very, very early on, and are now doing really, really well online, kind of under the radar, selling products all over the world. 60% of what they're doing is outside the UK, doing really, really well. They're now talking about coming back onto the high street again, because they think it's the time. They think that kind of, so I think the challenge for retail and e-commerce is that, again, for me, I have an openness to business, to revenue. The way we do things is always right. Can we do that? Can we tweak that and maybe, try a new channel, something we haven't done before? I think if you're in that kind of position, and look, a lot of businesses have really struggled from a retail perspective because of COVID. It's just put their lights out, or has nearly put their lights out. My mum and dad have a little food business and then a skill, and it's been really, really hard for them, So, and I've tried to get them to do things like take cash by contactless payments, and my mom's like, "What are you talking about, taking cash by contactless?" Get that crazy stuff, I know, So some people won't ever change, but I think that, again, the thing that COVID has done is it's really made people think, right, we now need to make the leap. A lot of food businesses have started doing, meal plans, packs, boxes you're collecting. A lot of them are going to continue doing that. So whilst it's been horrible, I think it's also been very, very good in that it's forced people to make decisions maybe they're putting off. And equally, I think a lot of e-commerce businesses that were doing traditional stuff previously have kind of skyrocketed and have been sort of subject to the ups and downs of what COVID has done to their business as things have opened up again. So retail and e-commerce is really, really interesting. I really wish that a lot of and I really want local retailers to come to E-Comm Live, because there's something there for everyone, whether you're starting off and want to get a Shopify store going for $29 a month, or you're more established. We have all of those people in the room, but there is still a real reticence for people who, I think some people who work in the retail space and they see e-commerce as the enemy. It's not. It's just another channel. It's just another shop window for you, and Other people have made the leap and have done really well. Other people have made the leap and haven't done well because you think e-commerce is easy, and it's definitely not easy.
Is there an element of, I mean, the old expression, must is a great master, and that the experience of the last 16 months forced people to make decisions that they were maybe procrastinating on for a long time. And I mean, again, this goes back to the question, I suppose, on transferable skills and how everybody thinks their sector is entirely different from all the others. I mean, global engineering business back in 2008, construction industry crash happened. Our business dropped more than 50 or 60% in the space of just everything turned off. And we realized at that stage that our product set wasn't fit for us to scale. And what the recession did back then in 2008-09 was gave us 2 years to completely redesign our products and how we were going to deliver them. Without that, and that business has gone on to be extremely successful, without that recession, I don't know, and maybe some of the people who were in the business would disagree with me at the time, but personally, I don't know whether it would have scaled as well if it hadn't been for the experience of somebody shining the light on the fact that the way you're doing things here isn't scalable. There's obviously been a move to e-commerce businesses a lot earlier. Have you found that, Corey, with traditional retail businesses that maybe didn't have an e-commerce offering now coming to Codefixer and wanting some help and helping to develop an e-commerce offering?
Yeah, so I think inherently there was a bit of a reluctance to move over. As you were saying, Kevin, it's people thought, well, it's either this or that. You can't be a physical store and have e-commerce going at the same time. And I think what we've learned the last year and a half now is that that's just fundamentally untrue. And that the companies that were able to remain agile, go and start a little website, as you said, a couple of quid a month. It doesn't need to be the huge build. It can be starting off with using Facebook to try to flog some of your products because you're not able to open the shop doors. And a lot of businesses are kept alive doing that. And generally what you find is that businesses won't make the leap until they really have to and the back's against the wall. So we've got local retailers that are coming to us and that are trying to get onto a national or an international market. And the ones that were early have kind of had that time to learn and adjust and adapt. At the start of COVID, when companies were giving excuses like, oh, well, because of COVID, our customer service guys aren't available to contact. People have given up on that now, right? You've had enough time, adjust and adapt. And I think that when you're dealing in a national or international market, instead of being the local small town retailer, you need to compete on stuff like price. You need to compete on stuff like user experience on your website, shipping, free deliveries, those kind of things, and they become really, really important. But companies that have made that leap and that have come through with an open mind to it and that are approaching this as if it's an opportunity rather than something that they have to do because of this or that, I think that those are the ones that have flourished. And generally you hear these crash boom kind of things like World War II and the end of World War II, what happened off the back of that, or the 20s, and generally what happens is that when these businesses or when society is faced with great adversity, that it bounces back stronger and you learn from it. And I think that businesses in Northern Ireland now, retail, whilst shop fronts, especially where I'm from in Bangor, are shut up and shuttered down, there's still a lot of cool businesses coming out of there. And whilst they've moved away maybe from the high street, maybe they're now in a little industrial estate and they've got themselves a unit there, but they're doing very good. There's some great stories in Northern Ireland of small local businesses that, Northern Ireland's not that big a place, 1.8 million people, that are now doing sales across the UK or across the world that are making stupid money that just didn't used to exist here, So I think it's an opportunity. It's a bit sad that we got kind of kicked into it, but, at the same time, adjust and adapt. And
I find a lot of the innovations come in actually the service delivery side of it. There's been an awful lot of businesses that haven't essentially changed what they do. They've just changed how they deliver it. Yeah. And made it easier to get stuff to customers and realized the pain, I suppose, that they were putting people through previously, because that's what they'd always done, until people stopped being able to do it. And then they were like, we actually need even the things like and people are willing to pay for these. And I know it was during COVID whenever things were locking down. But that whole cook at home menu thing. See, if somebody had said to me 2 years ago, you don't have to go out for a meal, but you can pay over the odds and you can go to a restaurant and they'll give you a wee bit of part-cooked food and you go home and cook it yourself and they charge you about 4 times as the amount as they do when you go to the takeaway. You'd say, would you ever catch yourself on? Like, there's no chance. But because people took the restaurant experience away, that whole new opportunity came out, and I availed of it quite a lot, because you couldn't go out for an eating event and you thought, I want to eat something better than my own food. So I'd rather it was cooked by somebody who knew what they were doing, and somebody who could make it taste better. So do you think that's a lesson that will continue then, in terms of how we go about buying things, and a realization of how companies and brands can make it easier for people to buy from them?
I think it's choices that, that now, especially now that things are starting to kind of, maybe they're starting to reopen, and we're kind of going back, that it hasn't been that one option's been taken away from us. It's just that you're given the flexibility. And, I work hard, long hours, like we all do. And, I just don't have time to go down to the shop to get something stupid like a pair of trainers when I can just order them online. Like, I know what size I am. I know what the shoes look like. I'll go on the internet and buy them, but at the same time, there's still that option to go down and have a look. And I think that variety for customers and variety for companies can only be a healthy thing. If you're giving people more ways to buy your things, another idea like Klarna, that's something that's come out relatively soon. It's afforded people extra flexibility. They don't need to wait until payday to get the new shoes. They can get them now, and they can split that out. Whether or not that's a positive thing's different debate. But I think that the company's just offering customers different ways to do business with them. Like, you're offering them more ways to give you money at the end of the day. So I think it's healthy, and I think that things have always been getting more digital, especially since I've been kind of a young adult, since I was like 18, 19. Things have progressively moved online. And I think that there's always a space to have the retail, to go in and speak to a person and get speaking to someone that can make a recommendation or answer some of your queries or give you some advice or show you what something looks like or let you smell something or see it or feel it. Or, I think that that's a really important thing. But I think at the same time, you might just have the guy that wants to order it online. And I think having that flexibility and that variety available to your customers is only a good thing for everyone,
I suppose one thing, just conscious of time as well, one last thing I suppose I want to ask you is, we've got that new fantastic Ulster University building being built round the corner. It's going to bring, I think the number said 15,000 staff and students back into the centre of Belfast. And we can all see, I remember some of the student accommodation I lived in, and whenever I walk past some of the new stuff, you think students are living here. Do you think that, the city's changed hugely in terms of the cafe culture and the amount of restaurants and music hopefully will be coming back. Do you think that a change like that in Belfast can have an acceleration effect on what the physical space of the city actually looks like in terms of what people want it to be? Because if we've got that young audience, that young students now living and studying in the centre of the city, is what they want the city centre to be different?
I guess it's focusing more towards the recreational aspect of our cities and our outdoor spaces. I don't really want Belfast to just get stuffed with the same kind of like corner shops and stuff. I know once again, go back to Bangor, that things kind of moved out of the town centre more into those outside locations where you've got these shopping complexes and things that are kind of on the ring road, which, whilst they haven't done it, allows the centre of the town to be able to be used for more recreational things, to be spaces that you want to go. So once again, cities change, and it's just how we adjust and adapt to that, and think about how we, what is the purpose of Belfast City Centre now? Is it somewhere that you go to pick up your food for the week, or is it somewhere that you go with your friends to do things together? And I think once again, they're both good things. There's pros and cons,
Yeah, I think it'll be a mix of both. I think obviously the big thing for Belfast we need to bring back is tourism, which has been hit hard. Over the last year, we've got fantastic hotels in Belfast. Lots of great, fantastic places to go out to. Cathedral Quarter, love to see it up and alive again. So I think it's still keeping in mind family days out, like I'm from Cookstown, from an Ulster, we come up to the big smoke for a big day out. Like, so I think it's about keeping in mind, you know, who's coming to the city. It's just not going to be flooded with students. We want to bring back tourism. We want people to come to the Game of Thrones. Like I myself, I'm coming up in September to do the Line of Duty tour, which is going to be really fun. Really looking forward to that. So, like, you know, if you're just bringing in all sectors, you're bringing in creative sectors, you're bringing in film, TV industries that are generating revenue again for people coming in to do tours of film locations. So, and it's about making the city accessible as well, perhaps. Maybe, like I know there's already a lot of cycling lanes, like should the city centre be pedestrianised? I know there's some regen plans in the pipeline for Castlecourt where Debenhams was at. So I just think it's about keeping in mind everybody and bring as much people back and as much life back into the city as possible.
What would I say? Well, I'm passionate about Belfast, so E-Comm Live. You know, actually, people were asking us about putting an event on in Dublin, and we're like, well, we might do something in Dublin, but we just want to keep E-Comm Live in Belfast. We want to bring people to the city, enjoy the city. Whenever I speak to global brands and I'm on the phone, like I'm hustling and I'm connecting with them on LinkedIn and then talk to them, will you come to Belfast? People want to come to this city. There's a great story here, the story about like how we've transformed ourselves, how through the peace process, all the FDI that's happening. It's brilliant. You know, like I had, and again, one of the guys I'd speak at a conference a couple of years ago was Christian Gladwell was an ex-officer in the British Army who was at the Drum Cree protest, and he's now the head of M&C Saatchi Performance in the West End in London, one of the multi-million pound kind of agency, right, for, you know, part of the Saatchi group. And I said, will you come back over? And he said, yeah. And I walked him around, right. He had been an officer in the army. He used to like have to do, he told me something ridiculous, this little yard they had for exercising and how many laps he had to do to get a mile in, you know, and then he was being helicoptered all around the place. He thought Northern Ireland was massive, and I brought him up to the Shankill and brought him up to the Falls, and he said, I didn't realise they were so close together. Like, so that's the story of Northern Ireland. Like, that's all gone. These guys want to come back. They want to see the city. They want to be part of it, you know, so we need to sell that. And we need to, again, like, how many people have done the Titanic tour? How many people have been, you know, like, this is all around us. Some of these people are coming over here and they're doing it. Why are we not doing that sort of stuff as well? So I think Belfast City Centre, we need leadership. I don't think we've got much of that at the minute. I think the politicians, again, COVID's forced them to pull their finger out of their arse as far as licensing laws is concerned, and that's great. But now what we need is rebuild the city, make it experiential, have stuff to do, cafe culture, bring it properly to Belfast. Like, there's no need for...
Is this the Kevin Traynor manifesto?
No, this is the, you know what I mean? It's a great city. It's a bloody great city. Like, the weather's shite, right? The weather's crap. Like, this is great at the minute, but the weather's generally crap. But we could be doing so much more with the place, and now we've got an opportunity to do so.
Actually, on that, I mean, I had a very interesting conversation a couple of weeks ago as part of a project with Ulster University with Kate Nicol, who's the new mayor.
Yeah.
And I mean, I am 100 times more confident in the future of politicians in this country based on one 30-40 minute Zoom call with Kate Nicol than I have ever been. I mean, she talked about, she moved here from Zimbabwe when she was 12 or 13. She's the first person who's born outside of Northern Ireland to be mayor since the 1870 or something. She's 32 or 33 years old. She's been here 20 years. She said, I'm more of a Belfast girl than a Zimbabwean one now anyway, but she was always welcomed here. And she said that people often view the city through the lens of the Troubles. She said, but that's not my experience. This is ancient history for me. I came here in the year 2000. All I've experienced is a very positive, welcoming city that's made me feel like home. And she even said, they even allow a blow-in like me to become a mayor, which tells you everything you need to know about the city of Belfast. So it's hugely optimistic to see all the things going on. It's obviously been a tough last 12 to 18 months, but hopefully we're coming to the end of it. So I suppose, Corey, do you want to say anything there?
I mean, look, I've just got a point in there that especially, you know, I feel like, you know, maybe we're a bit kind of ambassadors here. Sorry, I don't mean to say, but just for young people that are just coming up into their careers now, that we don't really want our politicians to be having arguments about things that happened before we were born. It doesn't really inspire any of us to get into politics. I think what we need is people that are more representative of the people that we're in this room with today. All of us, you know, the team behind, you know, you guys, and I don't think we get that. I think we get a bunch of old grumpy old sods, and it's not good for
danger of us turning into the Nolan show here in a second. So I think on that note, it'd probably be a good point to call it quits here. Sure, we can continue that conversation afterwards. Thanks very much, Corey, Eileen, Kevin. Really nice to have you on, and it was a really good conversation.